Welcome to the Life of Hair. My name's James Atkinson. Thank you for choosing to join into this week's episode. Now, before you skip this intro, please just wait a second. I want to tell you something. There is something really important about how YouTube have changed the performance of the algorithm, which ultimately impacts how many people see the videos that I produce. Now, if you're a big fan of this channel or you've ever learned anything, then please do me this enormous favor of watching the videos in their entirety, from beginning to end. Even if you just put it on and just let it play and don't actually watch it all. That really helps these videos get further out to a bigger audience so more people can enjoy this. This is the equivalent of sharing it with your friends. This is the equivalent of telling people about this channel and helping other people, maybe like I've helped you with your careers. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for listening. Now, the lady in this particular episode, if you watch our Wednesday night lives, her name is Hobus Pobus, but I affectionately call her Hippopotibus, which was a mispronunciation of her YouTube name. Her real life name is Gail, and she came to the studio and had her hair done by me. And as a means of saying thank you, she sent me these two fantastic paintings that are inspired by some of the creations that I've made on the Wednesday night lives. Gail, thank you so much for this. I was shocked, touched and amazed when I opened the packaging. I need to find a great home for them here in the studio. It is hugely appreciated. Any gifts are overwhelming, in fact, as far as I'm concerned. I just never expect people to send me or give me anything. So until next time, guys, thank you very much for listening to this little intro. Please enjoy the video. And of course, if you want to skip it, then skip through it. That's absolutely fine. It just helps a lot if you just let the video run from the beginning to the end. Until next time, I'll see you soon.
So this is the starting point for today's episode. This is Hippopotibus or Hobus Pobus for anybody who watches the Wednesday night lives. Real name Gail. Thank you for joining us in the studio, Gail, for this episode. Now, looking at Gail's hair, this is her doing her own hair during lockdown. So we have a few things here to deal with. We've got a money piece existing around the face and some highlights that were there from when Gail did her own hair. Now, what Gail is looking for from today's session is to create something a bit like this Audrey Hepburn picture that you see on the screen now. Now, obviously, there's a few things that we need to take into consideration. The previous colour, the sensitivity of the hair, some of the hair is a little bit damaged, and so what is achievable in one session. Now, there's a few things that we can definitely do. We can definitely lighten the underneath of Gail's hair, because throughout the back there is no colour, obviously. Very difficult to do the back underside of your own hair. Through the rest of Gail's hair, though, it's going to be about creating some stripey separation and contrast throughout the hair. We're going to be using some different highlighting techniques to achieve that today. So without any further ado, we're going to jump right into the technique and we'll talk you through each step of the way. We won't cover the toning part of this session in this particular episode because it's going to make this video a very long one indeed, but we will reserve that until next Sunday, so make sure you join us for that. What we've done is we've taken Gail's hair and we have centre parted it like so. We have got the centre parting running down and the colour stops at roughly the crown area-ish. So we take that all the way through to the centre back now, separate that hair out into two, just like so. And we're going to treat the front and back independently because obviously there is a lot of colour in the front. And then what we'll do is we'll separate out the hair just like that. And take that piece of hair, twist it up and pop it over here. So we're going to deal with this hair in two separate ways, mainly because at the top here we're going to be putting the colour up towards the root area and then back down just to create that separation and contrast within the hair to take it as close to the old Audrey picture as possible. Now, someone mentioned in the comments last week or the week before, or I don't know, at some stage, that the colour that I did on one of my models was nothing like the images she showed me. And I never try and copy exactly what
the pictures are that I'm shown. I do it specifically for the individual that I have in front of me. And if you are trying to copy pictures that people bring in, you are creating yourself a massive headache. So always, always, always take it as inspiration, but don't take it as gospel. Because if you are then trying to put exactly that colour onto your client, you are really, really up against it. Because if the client is expecting, their expectations are set at exactly what the image is that they have brought in, you can easily cause yourself an enormous headache. So please be really mindful of saying that you can do exactly what it is. Always go in with, thank you for inspiration, but we're going to obviously make it fit to your hair, because it's better that way anyway. Everybody's a winner if we do it that way. If we do it the other way and we say, yeah, exactly what, they might not have the right base colour, they might not have the right levels of lift from their hair, there might be other factors that are in the way of achieving that particular look. Lots of you will already know that, but some of you will be struggling to create certain looks because you are offering too much. So always try and temper that feeling of kind of, I need to get this exactly so for the client's sake, because you know we can set ourselves to higher expectations as well sometimes. Good stuff. Right then, so we're in the back and we've got pretty much no lightness in the hair at the moment. There's a little bit here, but we've kind of cut the front to the back into two, which is cool. We're going to then go down straight in the centre back. We're not going to do a ton of colour in the back here, but we are going to do some. And what we want to ultimately do is create a little bit of contrast and separation. So because there's no colour in the back here, we're not going to spray it on our bonding treatment just yet. We'll spray that on when we get to the top. Now the thing that we need to be a little bit mindful of is obviously the quantity. We're going to do a root shadow on this later anyway, so we're not that phased about whether we leave any lines of demarcation close to the root area at this point, but we do want it to obviously limit the amount of work that we need to put into it. We don't want it to be too arduous in terms of the workload. So if we come in here, we've got ourselves about a 2.5 inch section of hair. We're going to hold the hair out horizontally and we're going to weave from about 2/3 of the way down, and this is going to create 4 kind of triangles of hair. Now they're a little bit too deep, so we're going to then obviously change it, and the way that we would change it is that instead of weaving from the ends, we're going to weave from about 50% of the way up the hair. So we do exactly the same thing, and we're taking about 1 centimetre's weave, we're leaving about 1 centimetre, and then we're taking 1 centimetre's weave. Okay, and then this has taken much smaller pieces of hair, still in little sort of triangle, rectangle shaped set. We're going to go in with our foil. We're going to stick our hair down to our foil by applying to the mid-lengths first. Then we want to saturate, saturate, saturate. Everybody knows, anybody that watches the channel regularly will know specifically into saturation. And we want to paint the lightness slightly higher than we want the end result to be. So we've got a little bit of room to do a root stretch over the top of this. So it's really, really important that we give ourselves that little bit of extra space at the top of the foil to do our root stretch. If we only paint it to the absolute point at which we want the colour to finish, we will then be root stretching over hair that we want to be blonde or lighter. So we're going to simply just fold in half, nice and easy, and we're only going to fold one side. We just, we're not going to paint in between it, it's not to the root, so we don't have to get too excited about making a beautiful little parcel with our foil. We're going to come up the head about, it's roughly 1.5 inches. It looks slightly different on this side because there's a slight diagonal because of the previous colour. We're going to come in, we're going to pick up this whole section, and we're then going to come in, and like we did on the previous section, about 50% of the way down, we're going to take a centimetre, leave a centimetre, take a centimetre, leave a centimetre, take a centimetre, leave a centimetre, and then separate out that hair.
and then that's going to leave us with great contrast and separation in between each of our weaves, and that's going to give us that lovely stripy vibes. But again, in the back here we're only going to be putting in about 6 foils, so not a lot of work at all, but when you'll see it at the end, we're going to get quite a high impact finish from such a small amount of work, which for me is always a winner. There's nothing like breaking your back for no effect. We've all done it. We've all done a technique that's taken hours, and we've stood there, we've got backache and our shoulder blades are killing us, and then we do the colour and it's a bit disappointing. So the techniques that are like really quick and super easy and look fantastic are always the ones that I will hone in on and go towards. We don't have to make loads of work for ourselves. What we have to do is produce results. So results are the king in this particular situation. Right then, final section. Now it's a bit of an odd shaped section. It's kind of triangular with a curve on it. There's a few ways we could tackle this. We could whip the top off it like this, and we could weave through there, or we could take the entire section and kind of angle it back towards ourselves in this direction, which is what we're going to do. And we're going to come about 50% of the way down the hair, and then we're going to go in and out, in and out, and then kind of decide if that's enough hair. Is that satisfactory to the result? And I would probably say that is doing it for me. Yeah, perfect, good stuff. Right then, pick up this foil, pop it in there just like so, and then saturate, 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 and stroke the brush up towards the root area. That's going to help to diffuse and soften any of the colour going up towards the root. As much as we don't mind demarcation in this particular instance, because we're going to do a root stretch afterwards, we'd obviously preferably do as little work as possible, and leaving ourselves a really hard line to eradicate later, well, it's just adding to our workload unnecessarily, when we can apply the product a little bit more softly with an upward brush stroke like so, and create a little bit more softness for us to deal with later. I have tried it both ways, and I've got to say that the amount of extra work it creates when we leave a hard line in there is definitely not worth just doing a few upward brush strokes towards the root area to diffuse any lines. So that is saturation of that section. And what you can also do as well is, if you're not sure whether you've got the back side of your section well saturated, especially towards the ends, because remember, towards the root area it's not such a problem, but if you're not sure about towards the end, you can always lift your section, check the inside, probably do a little bit more colour on the areas there which we want it to be most saturated, and then kind of fold it back round. It doesn't have to be saturated on the underneath side of the section closest to the head as well as it does towards the ends, and that is purely based on the fact that we want more diffusion, like a balayage type of technique, up towards the root area. So, super stuff. What we've done is we've put a rectangle shaped section in through the top of the head here. We're going to put another one in on this side, and what we're going to do is work through that rectangular shaped section to create vertical lines. We'll talk more about that when I actually do it, so hang around for that. But before we do that, we're going to tackle these underneath sides sections. So if we just bump this up out the way, and one of the guys that trained me many moons ago called that a voodoo knot, which I always particularly like the name of. I thought that was pretty super. Right then, so here we have our section through the sides. Now through the sides we're going to just work vertically up. There's more lightness around the front, so we kind of don't need to do anything with that specifically. I think that's going to be a-okay on its own. I like the fact that it's diffused at the roots, and I think Gail smashed it, to be honest. I don't know if you can see that actually. Let's just turn you around. There it is. So there we go. This is Gail's triumphant home hair, which
being polite.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
I was quite proud of it.
You should be proud of it. You did a great job. Okay, so we're going to come through the sides now. So if you just tilt your head over that way from the go, perfect. What we're going to do is come in horizontal sections just as we did on the opposite side. We can split this hair into two roughly. We don't have to be too pedantic about the size of the sections. We don't want to be too small because we're looking to create stripage. So in this front section here, we've got a piece of hair that we're perfectly happy with. So we're going to miss a centimetre, pick up a centimetre, miss a centimetre. So we've only got two little bits of hair in the back here, behind the ear and above the ear. So that's good to go. We're then going to come in with our lightener. And again, brush up towards the root area, stick down the product. Some people say they really struggle to get their product to, or their foils to stay. If you stick it down first before you do anything else, like saturate or blend, then you can work on the hair more freely. Through this side section here, we can see that we've got some lightness already towards the ends of the two sections that we've got. So we're going to work all the way through the ends of this section, hooking the hair back up and then diffusing back towards the root area. Remember, going slightly higher than we want our end result to be. And then we're going to come back in here and we're going to work our way down towards the ends of the hair, just like so. And then come in with our lightener, make sure it's well saturated. Saturation is the most important thing of any hair lightening service. It's even more important than the peroxide strength that we pick. Peroxide strength can be one of those things that actually hinders the result, whereas if we saturate, it will only help. And when I mean hinders the result, if we're using 40 volume and the hair's a little bit weak, it's doing a lot of damage very quickly, and therefore we can run ourselves into many issues. So we're using blue powder bleach plus 20 volume for this technique, and that is part of trying to help us with this technique. So again, just making this quick assessment of this section, we can saturate, but this one will diffuse into the blonde that's existing. We do not want to fry Gail's hair. That will not be funny. Right then, so we come in again, we're going to brush up towards the root area just like so, side to side to distribute our saturation, side to side, up towards the roots, just like that. Good stuff. Down towards our blonde, move our blonde hair to one side, making sure that we separate out the brown pieces, and just I'm going to go over that little piece there, which looks great, and then work our way through just like that. Lovely stuff. Move that hair to the side and then fold this in half. So we can see there's not a lot of saturation on those ends, just because of where they were positioned on the foil. They were right at the end, so we fold it in half and then come back in and just go over those ends. But also we can diffuse our root a little bit further at the same time. Dual purpose, added benefit of doing that there. So fold by a third again, and just secure one side. And we can see that obviously in this front area there is plenty of blonde, so there's no need to lighten around the face. Good. Okay, going to do exactly the same thing on the opposite side. Okay, so we're going to spray the old product on. I love the application of this. I mean, I know that like lots of bonders, you get mix them in with the product, and you know there's phase 1 and phase 2 and all that jazz. There is phase 1 and phase 2 with this, but the application, gotta say, love it. So simple, just to spray it on beforehand. Just comb it through and then just colour over the top of it. Genius.
Clients notice as well when I'm doing my clients with it, and I'm showing them this new product that I'm using. They're like, "Oh, what are you spraying on my hair?"
Yeah, it smells nice.
Smells nice, doesn't it? Yeah, it smells good too. Added bonus. Nice smelling bonder.
Yes.
Not too chemically. Right then, so we're going to work through this section now. Now in the front, I actually quite like what Gail's managed to achieve here, which is a little sort of money piece that goes back reasonably far.
That was learnt directly from your videos.
Directly
Giving
from the
away your
videos.
craft.
But I'm going to put it back in slightly higher around the face. So we're going to come in with our classic money piece style section. So we're going to take our first section as a slice and a weave, and then that will give us a nice money piece finish. Happy days. So we're going to slice the first one. When we slice bang on the hairline like that, it's going to be a little bit uneven on a lot of people's hairlines, because most people's hairlines are not perfectly straight. That's okay, don't worry about any gaps that are in that section, just foil it as it is, no dramas. First, section 1, section 2, we're then going to come in with our little slice of hair again. Now, dependent on how soft you want this to be, you don't have to do slices back to back, so I'm going to leave a very, very small slither of hair in between each of these sections at the front, and that will just add a little bit more softness at the root area, giving it a slightly more natural but still very high impact look. So we're going to just make sure that we paint all of the brown pieces so it's slightly on the diagonal there, which is good, and then fold by a third again, helps your uncle. And then our third section is going to be a weave, so we're going to take out a 3mm size section, and we're going to take a fine weave off of the top, and then pop in our foil. Just like that. Great. So what we're going to do is hold this foil out of the way. Turn, go around slightly. So what we want to make sure we're doing now is that we're working through our sections in a vertical fashion. So what I'm going to do is jump to the other side. I'm going to put in exactly the same foiling pattern on this front hairline, which I won't show you because it's just exactly the same thing. But then I'll show you exactly how I'm going to tackle this top once I've got those foils in. Cool, right then, so that is our money piece in. So we're going to work through the top sections here now. So we want to create definitive separation. Now we could work in exactly the same fashion as we did through the rest of it, but we're going to change it up slightly. Now, to give the money piece some separation from the hair around it, we're going to work behind the money piece. So we're going to leave this triangle of hair out for now. We will put a little root stretch on that in a minute or two once we put these foils in. But yeah, we want to kind of come away from that piece at the moment. Now obviously, to create separation and contrast and make the front really pop, we're then going to put that root stretch on, but we're also going to leave out some of these ends. So let's take our next section, and we want to clean up this section as much as possible, so just do it like so. So that will be the section that we will root stretch over or down to here, and then blend into these lighter ends. These lighter ends are a little bit sensitive, so we didn't want to lighten any of those anyway. So let's put that over here out of the way. Take our slice through here. Now we're going to be working in slice sections now. So we want to keep our slice sections fairly thin so they lift nice and evenly. Working through slices is always going to create obviously a strong look to our technique. So we're going to slice 2 sections back to back, and then we're going to leave a gap of equidistant size, and then we're going to work through, and that's going to help to create that kind of separation, and this is really going to give us some serious contrast in our sections. So that's going to be bang on for what we were trying to achieve. We don't want them to be as chunky necessarily as the underneath, because then we really would be kind of heading into tiger territory, but we can have plenty of contrast and separation and saturation still, even with that size of a section. So that is only a good thing. So we're going to go in like that, fold it by a third again, secure my back. Now we're going to put a little root stretch onto this, which will make it look a little less stripy, but we still want plenty of stripe action going on. And what I will do is, although I've committed to the idea of doing 2 and then a gap of equidistant size in between, I will assess that that is the right thing to do once I've done this second foil back to back, because you know, even though I've kind of committed to that idea in my head and that's how I think I'm planning to do it, doesn't mean to say it will be 100% right when I actually do it. So let's just make sure that we are happy before we commit to something, rather than just saying, oh yeah, that'll do, because that is the root of all evil in a lot of ways. I'm just saying, yeah, that'll do, and then not being happy with the end result. Remember as well, the root shadow will soften down the overall kind of striping, if you like, of the root area. Without going for the full Jerry Halliwell vibes, you know, with the kind of ginger and blonde feel. Not this time anyway. Not fancying that gown. Going for the redhead and blonde
I have
vibe.
seen that a lot with the
Yeah.
blonde streak at the front and ginger coming back apparently.
It is apparently, yeah. I've seen a few people doing it.
It looks good on them actually, but I don't think it looked good on me.
Not for you. So let's assess how much hair we've got in there. Yeah, I mean that is about 5mm worth of hair. I think that's enough. I don't want it to be like crazy stripy, but you know, I want it to be stripy enough. So we'll take a 5mm gap now. Just put it down for me, go. That's perfect. Take a 5mm gap from our previous section, and that will have a root stretch on it, and then we'll come in with our next slither of hair, a slice of hair behind that first section, and just pop in our foil. Just like that. So that's good. Just make sure, so this piece of hair that's really light in here that we've kind of overlapped, we just want to make sure we get the product off that hair. Just overlap that by accident a little bit, but don't just leave it, get it out of there. Get some of that product off. Fold it by a third. Bob's your uncle. Next section, directly behind that section. Just a nice slice of hair We can see that it's not too thick. That's it. So it's not too thick. We can see the foil underneath it very clearly. So that means that it's approximately the right depth. If we work to kind of similar proportions as we did with our previous, so that probably means it's the right depth, and if we work to similar proportions as we did with our previous sections, we'll have a similar sized stripe in the hair. So let's saturate this piece well. It's got lots of hair density on this right hand side. At the root there's lots of density on the left hand side, so we really do need to work that in quite well. Push this hair that is already lightened out of the way, and then feather through towards the ends just like so. It's good. And then pull that hair to one side, fold by a third. Secure the back, and just double check that you've kind of got the same amount of hair in each of those sections, which looks good to me, and then work our way to the back. Once I've put in that section at the top here, I was kind of figuring out where this hair might live. The likelihood is that it's going to live in the back. So doing the striped vertical sections across the head, or horizontally applied, and they will come out vertically when the hair goes back into natural fall, isn't necessarily going to be good for this section. So I've left the gap of hair in between each of the sections, but then this back section I'm going to do it in exactly the same way as I did the underneath sections. I'm going to come through, I'm going to come about 50% of the way down the hair and pick up 1 centimetre sized pieces of hair, and then that's going to give me some little V-shaped sections, and then I'm going to feather up towards the root area. Now there is a lot of lightness on the left hand side of this technique that's there previously, so I will come in on the right hand side as my dominant side, and I'll just be dispersing the product up towards the root area. When doing these techniques, they're just so useful. They cover such a lot of hair in such a short space of time, and if you just saturate well enough, they do give you the lift you require as well. And it is really down to that kind of heavy saturation of product that makes these techniques work really well. If you don't saturate though, you will hate them, because you'll think that you didn't get the lift you expected. I was doing some teaching recently, and it was all about freehand balayage, and the people who I was teaching had got no faith in freehand techniques whatsoever, didn't think you could get the lift out of a freehand technique. But once I showed them saturation in its kind of maximum form and the amount of lift that was achievable, they were absolutely sold on freehand techniques. So, and it's the same whether we're doing foils, whether we're doing freehand balayages, whatever we're doing, it is literally down to saturation, whether your technique will be successful or not, to get the lift that you require to get the end result that you want. So it is saturate, saturate, saturate. I mean, there are obviously sometimes other factors in the way, previously coloured hair and tints that have been applied to the hair and things like that, that will ultimately hinder what the product is capable of doing, but in real terms, getting that saturation really high, whatever's on the hair, will help immensely. So they've just overlapped slightly here on some blonder areas, so if we don't want to keep that product on there, we can just come in with our comb at the point where the blonde starts, angle the teeth back towards us and remove that product nice and easily from the hair, which is fantastic. Fold the hair by a third. You know the score by now. Third again. Secure as necessary. Job done. So, on to our root stretch. Now, the root stretching part of this technique is primarily through this top section, because that's where the kind of most of the blonde is. We can see, like on a section like this, for instance sake, we can look at this side of the section, it's pretty dark all the way through to the ends. We'll still root stretch, it's absolutely fine. Bearing in mind that we are going to do a root shadow after this as well, but this is to kind of bring the dark down further. So in this bowl we've got a GB and an N, predominantly N, so 30 grams of N to just 5 grams of GB, golden beige. That's to prevent any green happening on this blonde hair, because it is very blonde. We can't pre-fill, obviously, because we would then need to rinse that pre-fill and then remove it and then have to go back in, and it would just be a disaster. So put in the shade of which you can one level warmer than you would potentially pre-fill with, one level lighter, or just put a smaller amount. I actually made a video on doing this, so if you want to go over to my channel and look at how to pre-fill, that is over there. So if you want to head over to my channel and look at the video where I show you how to pre-fill and what to use, you can apply those same rules to doing root stretches, root shadows, root smudges, whatever technique it is you want to use it on. It will all apply in the same way. You can just put it in your bowl rather than putting it on first, and then you will get exactly the result that you were expecting, rather than having to have a warm result, because you say, well, it's got to be red because you've got blonde in your hair, which I've heard a billion times, which is not exactly true. We just need to know how to fill that hair in the bowl, because it is possible. I know there's lots of people out there that argue it's not possible, but it is definitely possible. We do it all of the time, and if you just put a little bit of warmth back, it's amazing how far it goes. One of the things that I see more than that is when I'm in salon and people then fill the hair way too warm and they can't actually get that colour out. So let's say, for instance, they're going down to a 6, they decide that that's a red pre-fill, and that red pre-fill is then just virtually impossible to remove. So they're needing a green shade to come in to get rid of that colour, and of course very few ranges have really pure green shades, especially on a level 6. They're normally maybe ash green at best, and that's really not enough to combat that amount of warmth. I'm going to apply the product to both sides of the section, and then just, you can be a bit haphazard about this. It's not the most technical application in the world. All we're doing is feeding the product down. We're using a slightly flicky motion to get the product distributed through. We're going to come in on the angle like that, 45 degrees, facing towards us, and we're just going to distribute the product further down the head. We can use our fingers to distribute even further if we want to, if that's the vibe we're heading to, but it's up to you how much you want to darken, how much you want to drag that product down. Never go in at the root and pull the root area down, because there's a lot of product there and it will pull it really far down the head. So that's cool. And then, like I said, this triangle piece at the front, we're going to do exactly the same thing too. It's quite a thick piece of hair, so we do want to be a little bit mindful of how much saturation is possible through this section. It has travelled through the section reasonably well. We'll probably just split it into 2 just to make sure that we've got good saturation throughout our section, like that. Angle our comb towards us and drag the product down towards the ends, changing the saturation from glossy at the roots, satin in the middle ends, and matte towards the ends. And also, for anybody that's watching this that says in the comments, James, you've got no gloves on, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, I've got no gloves on. I was just working away and this is what happens. That's why my thumb is brown. Okay, so again, top side of this section, same thing, work that product down towards the ends. And that is that. Job done. Right then, we'll let this go and process now. We'll check up on our blonde in just a minute. It shouldn't be too long for the back for certain. The colour in between the falls needs 20 minutes to process, so that will be the minimum amount of time that we will leave it to cook. But obviously if it needs a bit longer, then it won't go too dark and we can just leave it on a bit further, so that we can kind of remove it all at once. You can't really remove it before that. If you think your product's going to take longer than that to process, you're lightener in the packets, then you probably will need to go maybe half a shade lighter than your desired result, even one shade lighter than the desired result, to make sure that you don't go too dark. I'm quite happy leaving this on. If it went a bit darker than my desired, the shade I've picked, I certainly wouldn't be disappointed with that. In fact, actually that would probably play well into my overall picture. So this is the finished result of Gail's hair, and this is pretty much bang on the brief of the Audrey Hepburn image that we saw in the beginning, with the kind of stripy, contrasty highlights in the hair. Now it's not obviously exactly the same, but as I mentioned early in this video, that I never aim to achieve exactly what the image shows. You walk yourself into all sorts of swathes of potential disappointment between you and the client at that stage, so always do what is possible for the client. Now, I didn't address how we then went about toning this particular color, because I'll talk about that in next week's video. It would have made a awfully long video to be now talking and showing you about how we toned it. So please make sure you join us again for that particular episode. And until then, guys, look after yourself, and I'll see you again for another episode of Life Fair very, very soon.
That was
Right then.
fun.
Good.
I'm off now. I'm glad you said on camera I can be invited back.